Hey, everybody, David Neagle. Welcome to the Successful Mind podcast. And today I have the amazing Mike Michalowicz. I trip over my own words.
Yeah,
today.
my name's horrible. It's just horrible.
No, it's great, actually. And we're going to be talking about his new book, Fix This Next. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Dave. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So this is an amazing book. After you went through the Profit First, it's interesting to be like, okay, where does this go next? And of course, it's Fix This Next. So what's the inspiration for this? Where did you come up with this?
So I found by happenstance what I believe is the biggest problem all entrepreneurs face. What happened was I emailed my readership saying, hey, what can I write now? And what I asked is, what's the biggest challenge you're facing this year? Well, like a dummy, I don't know, I triple clicked or something. This request went out multiple times in the same day. And in certain cases, the same people answered the same question, the biggest challenge for the year, with different answers on the same day.
Really?
Yeah. Like some guys like, oh, I got, sales, we got a sales issue. And it's like, no, it's hiring. And it's like, no, it's our vision. No, it's systems. And it became very apparent that the biggest challenge entrepreneurs face is knowing what their biggest challenge is. And that became the impetus for the book.
So when you thought about an entrepreneur, because of course, after you say it, it becomes obvious, right? When you start thinking about what are the different things that we hear, it really does become obvious as what is the next thing that I should fix. It's almost kind of like when you ask somebody, what do you want? They don't know what they should want. Well, what should I want first?
Right.
Right. Where did you decide to start with this? How did you cultivate that down into this idea that was actually the problem?
So I studied this belief of urgent versus important and found something that was, I don't know if wrong with, but need to be tweaked. So we constantly are told we focus on the urgent, not the important. I found there's a little tweak to it. It's not the urgent, it's the apparent. You see, we prioritize everything. We place urgency on it. So it's not demanding our time as much as we devoting our time to the different things in front of us. So whatever is the first thing that's presented to the entrepreneur is the thing that gets addressed. Those are the apparent issues. So with that realization, I said, how do we bifurcate apparent issues from the real impactful one, the one that will shift our business? And then that caused me to investigate the needs structure of a business. I translated it from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I know you know extremely well.
Yeah.
But Maslow basically points to the need structure of humanity, and that we have to start at a base level need, like physiological needs, adequately satisfied before we can address higher level needs. Well, I found there's a parallel in our business. But one other thing is, Maslow, we are neurologically wired into ourselves. I know when I'm hungry. I know when my safety is at risk. But in our business, we're not neurologically wired into our business. So my gut instinct, which I've been relying on, is actually, maybe it's a beacon at best, but it's not the de facto source to identify the impactful. So I created this hierarchy of structure, this hierarchy of needs for businesses, so we can back it with empirical data, pinpoint the exact thing we need to work on our business next that will have the greatest impact. Yeah,
let me show everybody just the triangle on this thing.
It's right there, yeah.
Back of the book, yeah, for the hierarchy on there. So because we're not hardwired into it, what are the identifiers that, because something has to say, here's an identifier to look at this. Like we're hungry, we know, like we can feel it in our stomach, or we feel blood sugar. What is it in a business that we're looking for?
Yeah. So ultimately there's 25 elements that I suggest are the common DNA for businesses. And as I was developing this and testing it, I did with pizza shops to accountants to law firms to manufacturers. We test out all these different businesses, hundreds in fact, coffee shops, and found this common DNA structure. I broke it down into 5 segments just to make it easy, but you can do it in the book. I have the full evaluation, but foundationally, every business, we first have to ask ourselves, do we have sales? And simply, do we have sales at an adequate level to support the level above it, which is profit? Equating this to Maslow's hierarchy. So Maslow says base level need of all humanity is physiological needs. We need to breathe air as an example. But you only need to breathe a certain limit of air. There's a certain point where breathing more air becomes hyperventilating, and it actually compromises your health. and we're breathing air to address the next level of absorbing oxygen into our bloodstream, building muscle, procuring safety, basically.
Yeah.
Well, in the business hierarchy of needs, it's a very similar structure. Sales are necessary, but are not sufficient alone. You need to have sales, but only inadequate sales to support a degree of profit. So sales is the creation of cash, the breathing in of oxygen. Profit then above it is the absorption of that oxygen into the bloodstream. It's the creation of stability. And I think it's interesting with this insanity going on with the COVID pandemic. It's been a real indicator of how many businesses are not focused on profit. It was, I'm paraphrasing, but Warren Buffett said something like, when the tide goes out, you see who's swimming naked.
Yeah.
Something to that effect. Well, we're seeing this with the profit level of the business hierarchy of needs. A lot of businesses really were focusing on sales, getting oxygen, but not absorbing it. And therefore, the second they had a little dip in their sales or a big dip in their sales, it wiped these businesses off the map. So we ask ourselves foundationally, starting at sales and going up through the 5 levels: sales, profit, then there's what's called order, impact, ultimately legacy. We ask ourselves foundationally, is it adequate to support the next level? And the second there is a inadequacy, that's the level we're at, and we have to focus on an area within.
So are you saying then that if the focus is too much on sales, it can be as if it was hyperventilating, it could actually take away from the next levels going up?
For sure.
Because explain that. That's fascinating.
Sales translates to stress, and it's a direct correlation. So as I was investigating this, what I discovered is sales translates to organizational responsibility. Say I'm your customer and you're selling more to me. You sell products and services and training and one-on-one coaching, all these different wonderful things. Every time you make a sale to me, your organization, and if you're a small business owner, often ourselves, have more responsibility now to deliver on it. You got to deliver the products and the services and do the stuff behind it. As we sell more, we put more responsibility on ourselves. And as a small business owner who often is integral to the business, they actually start putting more responsibility on their shoulders, which translates to more stress. Now, systems are one thing that alleviates that, right? So one-to-many products and so forth. There's things to alleviate that. But if we simply sell without focusing on profitability, efficiencies, what I call the order level, and so forth, we actually put more burden on the business. The owner becomes more stressed out, and the business is actually in a more compromised position. We need that balance of profitability, efficiency, and so forth.
So is this similar to when you hear a company that got in trouble because they say they grew too fast?
Yes. Sadly, I have a story of a dear friend of mine, $250 million company. They were in construction, in commercial construction. And from the outside, everyone's like, I'm not worthy. We're bowing to his organization. They had one project that was bad in regards to, they didn't manage the cash flow correctly, and it bankrupted the entire company. And hundreds and hundreds of people lost their jobs. The company's wiped off the map. And it's a shame. There is this propensity we entrepreneurs have to put significance in the top line and to ignore the health of the organization, that vanity metric. So sales is necessary. You have to have sales because it creates cash, but it's the retention and extraction of cash that brings about that balance. And many businesses, unfortunately, focus simply on the creation of cash and not the retention, and they're in a very precarious position.
Yeah, I had a guy that I was talking to one time who his first company was he acquired a printing company, and I don't know where he learned this. He said that it was just intuitive to him. They were doing really well, and he sat down one day and he realized that 85% of his business was coming from one customer.
Oh, yeah.
And he ended up letting that customer go. He fired that client. He recommended that they go somewhere else. And he broke it down into smaller customers. And he was telling me how vulnerable that made his company to have so much creative energy and fulfillment energy into this one client. And if they had lost it, what that would have actually, what would the damage that would have been done as a result of that consequence happening. And I was like, I said, nobody ever taught you that before. He said, no, it didn't. He said, but it just dawned on me one day. I was sitting down doing the books and I'm like, man, if we ever lose this client, we're in a lot of trouble. I better fire this client before we lose him.
That's courageous. I wonder if I'd have that courage,
Oh, me
because
too.
I think the solution that many entrepreneurs, myself included, try to apply is I'm 85% dependent on this person. Let me try to bolster and grow here to bring balance. Of course, the thing is, if I'm maxed on my capacity going to this client, it's actually impossible, right? So we're trying to focus this over here while our elbow's still lifting that other client. And then the day the client walks out, we're wiped out. I got to understand that it takes fortitude and courage, though, to make that decision proactively. I'm impressed.
Yeah, and he also said that he was getting a lot of demand. Like there was more demand on deliverables from that client than he had from anybody else, and they knew that that they were the number one client. So, there was a little bit of showmanship in there, a little ego going on. Like we need to be taken care of first, because we're your biggest customer, and he felt that. The demand alone was a red flag. He should have seen that right from the very beginning.
I had a friend. It's funny, this parallel story. So I had a friend. His name was Joe. Ran a company called Buy Right, not as in Buy Right Liquors, but Buy Right. They made like these tchotchke things. Like I'm wearing like one, like these bracelets. Yeah. And so they would make these things, and they sold them to Walmart, the dollar store, and so forth. It was a family-run business. He was second generation. Company achieved $4 million in revenue after 30 years and was sitting there. And Joe sat down and he looked at his customers, and Walmart was the number one buyer. They were the 85-pound, 85% gorilla. I don't know if it's that big, but they were pretty substantial. And he realized that kowtowing to them was compromising his ability to serve anyone else. He was basically becoming a single client vendor if he continued this path. So he decided to fire them. The way he did, I think, is unique. I remember forgetting this. He put a sign. There were 15 employees or whatever. He put a sign above everyone's desk. It says, "We always answer the phone in the first ring." He goes, if the first call is from Dollar Tree, who their true number one was, they got more margin from them. They loved working with them. The Dollar Tree valued the service because they didn't get cared for because everyone was kowtowing to Walmart. He said, if we get a Dollar Tree, answer in the first ring, take their order. And if Walmart calls, while you're on that call, let them go to voicemail and return the call after. Obvious stuff. It was the next one that was amazing. It said, if you're on the phone with Walmart, they're the first call, and the Dollar Tree calls while you're on the phone with Walmart, immediately disconnect from Walmart, say there's an emergency, and hang up, even if you're in the middle of an order, and cut over to Dollar Tree and prioritize them. So instead of just going cold turkey with Walmart, he started a deprioritization and an elevation of Dollar Tree. His company, $4 million after 30 years. The next year, I think they did 8. Then they did 17. He sold out 27 million. The interesting thing was the Dollar Tree started placing more and more orders with them because they finally had a vendor that was caring for them. But the word got out with all these secondaries, 5 and below, and all these different little tchotchke stores started going to him because finally they were being catered to.
Interesting. So do you think it's because, well, I imagine it would be two things. Like I could definitely see, I was trying to put myself in that scenario. If I had a client like that in the beginning, it would be hard to give up that cash. Like, no lie, that would be hard to give it up, especially in the beginning of the company. However, let's take that out of the picture for a second. Is one of the reasons why people focus on the urgency so much when it comes to the sales because they haven't mastered that part of the business yet, or they don't have the systems? Why is it that they look at the urgency first versus taking a more holistic approach?
There is no question from my research and also experiential learning that urgency is a survival mechanism. And one of the key factors, back to the Maslow hierarchy of needs, that brings about safety and comfort is financial security. The access to money, some people define this as financial freedom, the ability not to worry about bills, gives you the time to think. Most businesses are not in that position. So most entrepreneurs are in this, grow at all cost mentality. There's no profitability. And therefore they are in this constant thing, like we got to bring in sales. That sense of heightened urgency to sell anything to anyone manifests in prioritizing everything because it's moving the business forward. The irony is, as I did research, I wanted to look historically, like how much priority has our predecessors put in urgency over thoughtfulness. And kind of the defining moment was when I looked at Da Vinci's art, The Thinker.
Yeah.
And so here's this naked guy with his chin resting on his fist, just contemplating what's going on. I've yet to find the statue called The Doer. Like, some guy pulling his hair out and on a phone. There has been historical significance put into thought and contemplation, because that's where the big impactful things come from. When businesses aren't in this constant panic to just get by for tomorrow, and they start having sales, the oxygen that starts getting absorbed into the muscle profitability, then they start releasing some of that urgent putting out fire mentality, and they start giving themselves runway to be much more selective in what they do and prioritize appropriately.
Yeah. It does make me wonder what the why would be of these two different companies. Like, if you looked at these companies side by side, one where they already had the forethought to think about the hierarchy, kind of the way that you've presented them, versus somebody who was chasing the urgency, what their ultimate goal would be. Actually, I don't know if you've studied that or not.
I did.
Yeah. And what did you find?
Yeah, so it's within the hierarchy. So there's 5 levels. So sales is the base, profit, then order's efficiency, then impact, and this is getting to where you are, and then the highest level is legacy. Because the impact level, I saw a transition in business. The first 3 levels are about getting. Businesses must get sales in. We must get profit for stability, and we must get efficiency throughout our organization to start giving structure and strength to expand, relieve the owner from doing the work. Then there's this switch that goes from getting to giving. So when they say that you have to give to get, at least in the business structure, that's actually not true. It's the reverse. You must get in order to give. The impact level is where businesses start realizing they're not in the business of transactions as much as transformation. And your business, I know your business pretty well. We've had some time. We've dined together. Your business is all about transformation.
Yeah.
There's some businesses that you would like, I don't know, motorcycles. Like how can that be transformational? It's a product, it's a physical thing. Well, Harley Davidson is a great example of transformation. You buy a Harley Davidson, it means something to you. You belong to a new tribe. And any organization can do that. It's these organizations that achieve sales, profitability, and efficiency that position themselves in order to give impact and start being transformational to their clients. The greatest thing, and this just blew me away, I haven't achieved this in my own business, I aspire to, the highest level is called legacy. And legacy is defined that the business now is permanent, it's designed to live beyond you. Well, I'm interviewing all these business owners, and these business owners that have brought their business to a legacy stage. And there was a common theme. They said to me, Mike, I always thought I was a business owner. And then one day I woke up when I achieved legacy and realized I never was a business owner. I've always been a business steward, meaning I had a responsibility to bring this entity to life, but this business is a life. It's about the permanence and the continuance of the business more than my involvement in it. So it ain't about me. That's the day you realize it's never been about you. That was fascinating. And my sense is my experience is you can only start achieving impact and forming a legacy if you get those first levels addressed. So the why for those businesses, I think, would assuredly be different. The one that doesn't have any profit is going to be saying, I need profit. Unfortunately, they're going to think that sales brings profit. No, a profit system brings profit out of sales. Yeah. The other business, I think, will be focusing on transforming lives.
That makes a lot of sense. That's the area that my company is focused on now, is how do we create it so that it's an actual legacy.
Yeah, beyond you, right?
Yeah, beyond me. Because for 20 years, that has not been the forethought in my mind.
Sure.
At first it was survival, and then impact has always been there, but it was more and more transformed to that over the years. But now as I'm getting older, it's like, what do I want to leave? What do I want to take this and just have it go away when I go away? Or is it going to actually do something for the long term, and make the impact? But so let me ask you this question. In order for these bottom 3 to work, sales, profit, and order, is the key that the systems or the teams are interchangeable at those levels, so that it's not reliant upon, say, maybe a personality or it's not reliant upon a specific leader within the business. And the reason I'm asking these questions is because I work with a lot of people that seem to be stuck with the idea of, oh, we can't go any further with this person here because without this person, nothing else operates.
Oh, you're right. We get capped by people.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a great question. It plays out at the order level. And if you can visualize this like a volcano is one way how mountains are formed, right? So it explodes and it builds out. So this isn't like a ladder. You don't start at sales, and once sales are mastered, you're working on profit and you're done with sales forever. We will oscillate around. Even the mighty Amazon they live by this. It's the makeup of all business. When COVID hit, they went right back to sales and they changed how they sell. Like they went to essential products. They changed the Prime program. So the order level is where we start extracting dependency on any linchpin. So I call it the DNA code within business. There's actually 25 elements I talked about in the beginning.
Yeah.
And within the order level, there's this thing called linchpin redundancy. One of the beautiful things, and you know this being an author, is when you write something, you also kind of got to adhere to it. So we ultimately become the guinea pigs of our own work. So I have a very small business. There's 8 of us at this physical office. Cumulatively, there's 15 of us. We're tiny. And what happened is we became very dependent on individuals. Myself as an owner, Kelsey, for example, who runs our operations, and Amy, who's just shipping books. Like we have one person that can ship books. Linchpin redundancy is where we started creating this overlap. So we have a primary and a backup. So for every role, we have 2 people that can do it. One primary is doing it, but the backup is required to do it consistently to be in position should someone leave. But we really took it another level, and this was kind of the bold move, and I talk about it in the book. It's called the 4-week vacation. And what we do to our organization is every employee is mandated to go on vacation for 4 weeks every year. And this is a wonderful benefit, I think, to our employees, but really the real benefactor is our organization, because it's 4 consecutive weeks. It's mini sabbaticals. When that person leaves, I believe a business experiences most of its elements in monthly cycles. So everything pretty much happens every month. Therefore, if I can take Kelsey or Amy or Jeremy or myself out for 4 weeks, now the backup plan has to be in place. That backup generator, it has to kick in.
Yeah.
And when that person comes back, if we had problems, it's that person's problem who left. Why did we have problems? Fix it, improve the systems, and let's do this again. Our company used to be a hierarchical, like pyramid structure. You have like the word me up top is how I had it, a long line down, and my team.
Right.
Yeah. That's gone now. It's a web-like structure. Everyone's cross-redundant. And I really feel, because I look at some of our contemporaries, that we've achieved a degree of efficiency and redundancy that surpasses our contemporaries, because we're not dependent on one person. Nothing has to wait. We always have someone in position to do it.
Do you think that other companies, like let's take a company like Amazon, and the overall picture of Amazon's growth, the amount of growth that they've achieved is like remarkable. Like it's right. Are these principles that would cause a company like that to achieve that kind of scale? And here's the question behind my question, or the reason behind my question. They didn't at first, right? When they were, especially like when they were just selling books, at first, it wasn't just Amazon, that was out there. So it wasn't like they were this big, huge, organization that existed all of a sudden overnight, but over a period of time. And I guess the other reason I'm asking is because it's almost like to go faster, you have to go slower. You have to build steady on the bottom first in order to then pick up, great speed and momentum later on.
So I studied UGG. Brian Smith was founded by Brian Smith in the 70s. I interviewed him extensively, and they ultimately were $1 billion brand, nothing like Amazon, but a substantial brand. And that was one of my, I actually dedicated a book to the research of that business, and saw parallels in Amazon. I only know Amazon from an outward observation, no interviews. But other organizations, Procter & Gamble, I studied. What I found, these organizations that achieve this hyper growth, is inevitably they've started off with a very niche offering for a niche community. I'll tell you UGG because I know their story most intimately. UGG makes this boot in the 70s, right? So it became really public awareness probably in the 2000s, like general public. But in the 70s, they make a boot only for surfers. The reason the UGG boot was made the way it is because this was designed for surfers, particularly on the Pacific coast, that were doing winter surfing, coming in cold feet from the Pacific Ocean, and needed a way to warm their feet in a material that wouldn't collect odor. That's why they use shearling, the material inside. And that when they walked on the beach, that sand wouldn't kick in and grind up their feet. So that's why the boot's calf high. Well, they make this boot, and then what they do, what Brian Smith did, is start replicating the concept in different niches. So once he had mastered the surfer niche, and this really became popular with surfers, he then said, well, who also has cold, wet feet? And he said, oh, hockey players went in that market. Skiers went in that market. Finally, after entering all these different niche communities and getting serious momentum, that's when he said, I'm going to go for the mainstream. And he found a method that was working in marketing. He was going to hockey players, surfers, and finding the pro athletes or the semi-pros and getting them to first adopt these shoes. And all the kids want to be like the cool kids. So they start replicating. He said, if I go mainstream, who do people want to replicate? Particularly teenage girls. And that's when he found Brooke Shields. He gave Brooke Shields a pair and some others. Brooke Shields was on the cover of Vanity magazine or whatever it was, and boom, billion-dollar brand. But it didn't happen overnight. It started 30 years prior. Amazon was a faster thing, but to your point, master the books. They weren't mastering books. They were mastering shipping, control, ease of purchasing. And then they start replicating for other items, and then boom, it becomes explosive.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. How does a person know that this is something that they need to study? Because, Arjan Robbins, who's a good friend of mine. And I know I just had a conversation with Arjan, and we talk about you all the time to people and your systems and your books and what it is that you're doing. I don't think that I necessarily communicate probably as effectively as you would, because the profit first idea, they like that. They hear that. They're like, okay, tell me more about that. But because of the urgency that they have, how do they know if this is something that they need to start with right now? Because I think a company starts with it right now, immediately, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the DNA of every business. So the funny thing is, I would argue that people are living the system already, but at a subconscious level. So they're not responding to it. There is a need that's within your business, but to your point, we're focusing on all these apparent issues and not considering it. So it already exists in your business. You just can't see it. The question I ask people, I say, how long have you been where you've been? And when you see when they can see a clear pattern, when I can see a clear pattern for myself that I'm stuck repeating something over, that becomes my aha moment. When hustle and grind has been the way to grow your business, and you've been doing it for 3 years now, and you're exhausted, and the business isn't moving forward, that's the time you've proven hustle and grind ain't going to work anymore, and now you need to transition over. I tell people, if you don't know what your company's biggest challenge is, for sure, with absolute clarity, your biggest challenge is finding your challenge. And that's when I think a book or this concept comes into play. Okay.
Let's leave everybody with this. If you could give everybody one successful mind tip, I like to do that whenever I can, especially with somebody with your knowledge and expertise and the deep dives you've done into these companies, because there's like a treasure trove to pull from. What is a good, successful mind tip you could leave everyone?
I'll give you one. At least to me, this has been mind-blowing. And perhaps it's something even David, you may have not heard of before. It's no longer calling yourself an entrepreneur or business owner. And the reason, and I'll tell you the new term to call yourself, the reason is those terms become so bastardized. So, and you know this extremely well, is that we comply with the labels we assign ourselves. So if I say I suck at math, I will prove myself right.
Yeah.
Well, business owners and entrepreneurs are proving themselves to be business owners and entrepreneurs, which now in the paradigm of the media, and some experts even perpetuate this, is work harder, work your ass off. That's not the intention. Entrepreneurship was always intended to have a vision, choreograph resources around that to make that vision a reality, to actually be a provider of jobs, not do the job. Well, here's the new label. Call yourself a shareholder. That's the mind shift. Starting today, and it's simple to hear, it's hard to do. Next time you're at a cocktail party and someone's like, what do you do for a living? Say, I'm a shareholder in a small business. And people will look at you like a deer in headlights. And the person hearing this right now may be like, I don't even know what I just said. That some idiot in this blue t-shirt told me to say, call myself a shareholder.
Yeah.
But here's what happens. If you're a shareholder, I own Ford, stock. When Ford sends me a distribution check, I don't run down to the factory and say, I got to earn this off. I don't return the money to Ford and say, hey, thanks, but no thanks. No, I made an investment and this is a reward for me. When you say you're a shareholder of a business, what a shareholder does is collects the profits and renders opinion, meaning we send in votes. We select the board. We identify who the leadership team is going to be. That's our job. So the mindset shift is starting today and forevermore. Say I'm a shareholder of a small business, and I think you'll start seeing this shift in how you behave toward your business.
I love that. That's actually brilliant. Yeah, there's a lot. It's interesting how words morph over time with the different meanings that we give to them. Where can I just want everybody to show everybody the cover of this book again? It's called "Fix This Next" by Mike Michalowicz. Where can they get it? Where can they find out more about you, Mike?
Yeah, fixthisnext.com. Super simple. And at fixthisnext.com, there's details on the book and so forth. What's interesting, David, we set up a free evaluation. So you can evaluate your business. And there's no download or anything. You can just do it lickety split. Probably takes about 5 minutes. Evaluate your business. It'll ask you 25 questions. Yes, no answers. It will then pinpoint the impactful thing, what your business needs from you. And that way you can get started on a permanent shift in your business.
That's awesome. Thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Take care.